The city lights twinkled like distant stars, a silent, sprawling galaxy outside the glass walls of the high-rise. Inside, there was only the soft hum of the air conditioning and the rhythmic tick of the clock on the wall. For Leo, the night guard, this was the familiar symphony of his shift. A lonely melody played out in the vast, empty halls of the office building. His footsteps echoed on the polished marble floors as he began his first patrol, a routine he knew better than the lines on his own hand. Left at the main lobby, right down the finance corridor, check the server room, up the stairs to marketing, and back down again. Every door, every window, every shadow was an old acquaintance. Tonight, however, the silence felt heavier, the loneliness more pronounced. It was his daughter's birthday, and he'd missed the party, the cake, the laughter. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through pictures of her smiling face, a pang of guilt twisting in his gut. The clock on the wall seemed to mock him, its hands moving at a glacial pace. 1 a.m. He'd been here for 3 hours, with another 5 to go. The building was a fortress, he reasoned. He'd been working here for years and nothing, absolutely nothing, had ever happened. The security system was state-of-the-art. The doors were reinforced steel. What could possibly go wrong? As he completed his second round, the familiar ache of boredom began to set in. He sank into the plush leather chair behind the main reception desk, the one reserved for the daytime receptionist, and let out a long sigh. The city outside was a beautiful, sleeping giant. He thought about the next patrol, the one scheduled for 2 a.m. It was the longest one, covering all 12 floors. The thought made his legs feel heavy. He glanced at the bank of security monitors. A dozen screens showing empty hallways, silent offices, and closed doors. Everything was still. Everything was quiet. A little voice in his head, the voice of responsibility, urged him to get up, to do his job. But another, more persuasive voice, whispered back. Just this once, it said. What's the harm? You're tired. You've checked it all twice already. Nothing's going to happen. He wrestled with the thought. It was a dereliction of duty, a breach of the trust placed in him. But the temptation of rest, of a small break from the monotony, was strong. He decided to compromise. He'd just watch the monitors closely for the next hour. It was almost the same as walking the halls, right? He could see everything from here. He leaned back, convincing himself it was a smart, efficient way to manage his energy. He'd be more alert for the later patrols. It made perfect sense. So, Leo skipped the 2 a.m. patrol. He watched the screens, his eyes tracing the static images of deserted corridors. For a while, it felt like the right decision. The building remained a silent tomb. He sipped his lukewarm coffee, feeling a small thrill of rebellion. He was beating the system, bending the rules just a little. But as the minutes ticked by, his eyelids grew heavy. The gentle hum of the building became a lullaby. The rows of empty desks and chairs blurred into a soft and distinct pattern. Before he knew it, his head drooped, and the world of security monitors faded into the darkness of a deep and intentional sleep. He was jolted awake not by an alarm, but by a sudden, jarring noise from the monitors. On screen 4, the one pointing at the executive wing on the 10th floor, a door was ajar. A shadow moved. Leo's heart leaped into his throat. He sat bolt upright, his mind racing to make sense of what he was seeing. It couldn't be. He blinked, rubbing his eyes, praying it was a dream. But the image was clear. Two figures, clad in black, were moving swiftly through the office. Their faces obscured by masks. They carried bags, and they were methodically emptying the contents of a safe he didn't even know existed behind a large painting. Panic seized him. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. He fumbled for the panic button under the desk, his trembling fingers struggling to find the familiar red plastic. He slammed his hand down on it, sending a silent alarm to the police department. Then, grabbing his heavy-duty flashlight, which suddenly felt pitifully inadequate, he scrambled out from behind the desk. His mind was a whirlwind of regret. The shortcut out the nap. The one night he decided to slack off. He should have been up there. He could have heard something, seen something, maybe even prevented it. He raced towards the elevators, his heart pounding against his ribs like a drum. But he knew it was too late. By the time he reached the 10th floor, the intruders would be long gone. He could hear the faint, distant wail of sirens growing closer. The police would be here soon. And he would have to explain. He would have to tell them that the fortress had been breached on his watch. Because he was tired. Because he missed his daughter's birthday. Because he thought, just for once, it wouldn't matter. When the police arrived, the executive wing was a scene of quiet chaos. Papers were strewn across the floor, and the heavy door of the hidden safe stood wide open, its contents gone. The officers were professional, asking questions in calm, measured tones. "Where were you when this happened?" one of them asked, his eyes scanning Leo's face. Leo opened his mouth to lie, to say he was on another floor, to construct a story that might save his job. The words were right there, on the tip of his tongue. But then he looked at the empty safe, at the mess the intruders had left behind. He thought of the trust his employer had placed in him, a trust he had so carelessly broken. He thought of his daughter and what he would want to teach her about honesty and responsibility. A wave of shame washed over him, hot and suffocating. He couldn't lie. He couldn't hide. He had made a mistake, a terrible, costly mistake, and he had to own it. Taking a deep breath, he looked the officer straight in the eye. "I was at the main desk," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I fell asleep. I skipped my 2 o'clock patrol." The confession hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. There was no judgment in the officer's eyes, only a quiet understanding. In that moment, Leo felt a strange sense of relief. He had lost his job, he was sure of it. He had failed in his duty. But he had not failed his own conscience. The aftermath was difficult. As expected, Leo was fired the next day. The company lost a significant amount of money and sensitive documents. The news of his negligence was a heavy burden to carry. But in admitting his fault, he had taken the first step towards redemption. He learned a hard, painful lesson that night. Every choice has a consequence. Every shortcut has a hidden cost. Neglect, even for a moment, has a price, and it's often far higher than we can ever imagine. His single moment of weakness served as a stark, lifelong reminder that responsibility isn't a part-time job, it's a constant commitment. We bring you real stories with real lessons. Follow Moral Compass to explore the complexities of human choices. Thanks for watching.